Imagine locking your front door, confident that your home is safe, only to find out later that someone from your own neighborhood had secretly unlocked it. Now picture this. The intruder isn't a stranger, but the very HOA member who claims to protect the community. She walks in with full authority, ready to expose something she believes is wrong. But instead, she freezes. Why? Because waiting inside the living room are police officers, staring right at her. That's where today's story begins. A story so shocking, so twisted that every single detail will keep you glued until the very end. This isn't just about one woman abusing power. It's about what happens when someone believes they're untouchable, only to realize they've stepped straight into a trap. Every second that follows is more unbelievable than the last. And by the time we're done, you'll be questioning how far some people will go just to control others. So stay with me because trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. If you're ready for this jaw-dropping story, hit that like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? The morning sunlight barely touched the quiet neighborhood when Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, tightened her grip on the clipboard she never seemed to let go of. She had rules. She had authority. And above all, she believed she had the right to control the smallest details of everyone's lives. For months, she had been watching the young man in Unit 12, suspicious of his comings and goings. He paid his dues on time, his yard was neat, his car was polished, yet Karen's instincts whispered something was wrong. She was convinced that behind his closed door, secrets were waiting to be uncovered. And she, Karen, the enforcer of the homeowners association, would be the one to expose them. That morning she didn't knock. She didn't call. She slipped a master key from her pocket, the one she had sworn she'd only use for emergencies, and pressed it into the lock of Unit 12. The click of the tumblers falling into place sent a thrill of power down her spine. She felt important. She felt unstoppable. But the moment the door creaked open, Karen froze mid-step, her clipboard tilting in her hand. The living room inside wasn't empty. It was filled with uniformed officers, standing silently like shadows, their eyes snapping toward her as the door swung wide. The air was heavy, thick with something she couldn't name. For the first time in years, Karen's voice failed her. She didn't know whether to scream, run, or argue. The man she had been suspicious of sat calmly on the couch, hands folded, a small smirk tugging at his lips. And then one officer stepped forward, his gaze piercing, his tone sharp. "Ma'am, care to explain why you just unlocked this door without permission?" At that moment, everything Karen thought she knew about control shifted like sand under her feet. Karen stammered, words slipping out in broken fragments as her face reddened. She tried to recover her usual commanding tone, insisting she was only fulfilling her duty as HOA president, but the weight of the officer's stares crushed her confidence. She clutched her clipboard like a shield, babbling about rules, regulations, community safety, yet no one seemed convinced. The young man on the couch tilted his head, watching her like a cat studies a bird that has just flown into the wrong cage. She realized, too late, that she had stepped directly into a situation she didn't understand. One of the officers slowly approached her, voice calm yet firm, asking why she had a key to a private residence, and under what authority she thought she could use it. Karen's mouth went dry. The entire neighborhood had always bent to her will, but these men in blue weren't neighbors. They weren't afraid of her complaints or her citations. Their authority outweighed hers in every imaginable way, and Karen could feel her power dissolving by the second. The silence stretched, unbearably thick, until the officer repeated his question. This time Karen didn't answer with confidence. She muttered excuses, each one weaker than the last. The man on the couch finally spoke, his voice calm but laced with quiet satisfaction. "I told you she'd try something like this." All the officers turned their eyes to him, and Karen felt the ground slip further away. How did he know? Why had they been waiting? Rehook. What Karen didn't know was that the police hadn't just arrived. They had been waiting all morning, specifically because of her. and she had walked straight into their trap. Karen's mind scrambled to process. Waiting for her. Why? She replayed the last few weeks in her head, her spying, her complaints to the board, her angry letters taped to his door. She thought she was building a case, proving she was right, but now it felt like someone else had been building a case against her. Her legs trembled as the officer explained. The resident of Unit 12 had contacted them weeks ago, reporting harassment, trespassing, and illegal access to private property. They had advised him to remain calm, to document every action, and to let them know when she crossed the line. Today, when she slid that master key into the lock, Karen hadn't just broken a boundary, she had walked into evidence. She tried to argue, to demand that they listen, but her words only twisted the noose tighter around her reputation. The calm man on the couch revealed that he was not just a resident but a retired investigator, one who knew exactly how to set a trap for someone like her. Karen's knees weakened, and she grasped at the door frame, realizing the clipboard in her hand, once her weapon of authority, now looked more like a symbol of her obsession. The officers asked her to step inside, and though she wanted to run, her pride wouldn't let her show fear. She marched forward, chin high, though her hands shook. The apartment looked ordinary. Neat shelves, framed photos, a quiet plant in the corner. But Karen couldn't stop her eyes from darting, desperate to find something that justified her intrusion. She saw nothing. The young man's smirk widened and he spoke again, each word cutting sharper than the last. Funny how you always assume the worst, when the only problem in this neighborhood has been you. The officers exchanged glances, and Karen felt the walls closing in. She was used to controlling the story, but now she was only a character in someone else's script and she didn't like the role one bit. Rehook. But the story wasn't over, because what happened next would shatter Karen's carefully crafted image across the entire neighborhood, and no clipboard could ever repair it. The officers escorted Karen out of Unit 12, neighbors beginning to peek from behind their curtains. Whispers spread quickly, and within minutes, the street buzzed with speculation. For years, Karen had been the terror of late-night parties, unapproved paint colors, and slightly crooked mailboxes. Now, seeing her flanked by police, clipboard hanging limp at her side, was nothing short of poetic justice to those who had endured her tyranny. Karen tried to bark orders, tried to insist that everyone return inside, but her voice cracked, and for the first time, no one obeyed. A neighbor chuckled openly. Another whispered loud enough for her to hear. Guess the queen just lost her crown. Shame burned hotter than the sun above her head. The officers informed her that she would be reported for unlawful entry, harassment, and abuse of authority. The words rang in her ears like a sentence she couldn't escape. She wanted to protest, to argue, to explain, but deep down, she knew. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Still, Karen wasn't ready to surrender. She lifted her chin, forcing bravado into her voice, insisting she had been right all along, that she was protecting the community. But every word only dug her hole deeper. The young man stepped onto the porch, arms crossed, and addressed the gathering crowd. She thought she could control us. She thought she was above the law. But today, the law reminded her otherwise. Applause rippled through the onlookers, quiet at first, then stronger, until Karen's ears rang with humiliation. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the pavement, but her feet stayed rooted, trapped between pride and despair. Rehook. Just when Karen thought the humiliation couldn't grow worse, a revelation from the police officer would leave the entire HOA gasping, and change her fate forever.